A $100 billion data center, the biggest in America, just died at the Virginia Supreme Court. The project is completely gone, but the $16 a month rate increase approved to power it is still on the bills of the people who live there. The grid build out gets paid for whether the future shows up or not, and it's in 13 states going on right now, not just one.
Two things are true this week, and they should not be able to coexist. The largest data center ever proposed in America is officially dead. And your power bill went up anyway, not despite the cancellation, right alongside it. And the increase was decided months ago in a filing almost nobody read. If you live in one of 13 states across the eastern half of the country, this is your story, whether you have ever thought about a data center in your life or not. Here is how strange it got. The same week that enormous project collapsed in court, the power grid serving those same 13 states spiked to $2,500 for a chunk of electricity that normally costs about $40. That is 60 times normal during a federal emergency in the middle of a heat wave. So on one side, a giant project dies. On the other, the grid is screaming and your rate is climbing. The thread connecting them is a kind of paperwork that bills you for decades and never makes the news. Stay with me because I'm going to walk you through which project died, why your bill rises no matter what happens to it, and the exact three-state playbook. That is already forcing these companies to pay their own way instead of you. Start with the project. It was called the Prince William Digital Gateway in Virginia, and the scale is hard to picture. 2,100 acres right beside the Manassas National Battlefield where Americans fought a civil war. 37 buildings, more than 22 million square feet of computers. At full size, it would have been the single largest data center campus on Earth, promising tens of billions of dollars in investment. Behind it were two giants of finance, Blackstone's data center company called QTS, and a second developer named Compass. Local residents and battlefield preservationists sued, arguing the county broke its own rules on public notice. And the courts agreed and threw the approvals out. The county gave up after spending nearly $2 million of taxpayer money defending it. Compass gave up in April. And on July 2nd, QTS filed a single piece of paper at the Virginia Supreme Court withdrawing its last appeal, and the whole thing was over. That part made the news. Here's the part that did not. Long before the project died, the wires and the power plants meant to feed it were already approved, and you are already paying for them. Now, is the demand for all this even real? That is a fair question, because the artificial intelligence side looks genuinely shaky right now. This week, the Korean chipmaker SK Hynix, one of the main suppliers of memory for AI, had the worst single day in its history, falling about 15% and dragging the entire Korean market into an emergency trading halt. Industry trackers say that of the 16 gigawatts of new data center capacity planned in America for this year, only about 5 are actually under construction. Some analysts think a third to half of this year's projects could slip or die. But I have to be honest with you, because that is the whole point of this channel. Not everyone agrees. One of the most respected research firms in the sector, SemiAnalysis, called the half-canceled story a false alarm. Basically, people trusting sloppy computer-generated estimates. And the same day SK Hynix crashed, Meta announced it is expanding a single data center in Louisiana to a size that could ultimately cost more than $250 billion. So the demand is genuinely contested. Some of it is slipping, some of it is doubling down. Nobody honestly knows. Here is what is not contested. The grid spending is already locked in, and it does not care whether the servers ever arrive. And the structure of these deals is the real trap. In that Louisiana project, the local utility is building 10 new power plants with 40-year lifespans, while the financing lets Meta behave like a tenant that can walk away from the lease every 4 years. When the customer can leave in 4 years and the power plant lasts 40, somebody has to cover the difference if the demand fades. That somebody is the ratepayer. Meta says it is covering its own costs and even saving other customers money, and consumer advocates flatly dispute that. But the asymmetry is the point. The tenant can leave, you cannot. The clearest proof is something called the capacity auction. Once a year, the grid operator for those 13 states, an organization called PJM, pays power generators in advance to promise electricity for a future year. Think of it as a retainer the whole region pays to keep the lights on. That retainer just cleared at a record $329 per megawatt day.
Check this out. Hey everyone, real quick, just to break in, if you're in debt and you're sick and tired of it, you are living paycheck to paycheck and you want a solution, I put together a program called Dominate Debt. I'm going to put a link down below. It's a total game changer for you. I dare you to try it. If it doesn't work for you, within 30 days, email us and we'll give you your money back. That's how serious I'm about getting everyone out of debt in this country. Now let's go watch the video.
2 years earlier, it was under $29. That is roughly 11 times higher. The total is about $16 billion, and it started landing on customers across all 13 states in June. PJM's own independent monitor said 63% of that increase traces to one thing: data centers. PJM expects the region's peak demand to grow by 32 gigawatts by 2030, and all but 2 of those gigawatts come from data centers. A filing does not unfile itself when a project dies. The money is still owed. So picture a family in Woodbridge, Virginia, about 5 miles from the corpse of the Digital Gateway. Last November, Virginia's utility regulator approved a rate increase for their utility, Dominion, that adds about $16 a month to a typical home, pushing the average bill to around $165. That was $565 million collected from customers this year, and more next year. The data center next door is dead, their increase is not. Nothing about a cancellation reaches back and refunds a rate case. Then came July, and the grid nearly broke. During the heat wave, demand across PJM hit about 163 gigawatts, brushing a record that had stood for 20 years. The Federal Energy Department stepped in with 2 emergency orders, the third such emergency this year, and did 2 things. It let power plants run past their normal pollution limits, and it authorized the grid to force large data centers onto their own backup generators so the rest of us would not lose power. That is the tell. We are now running the grid in a near permanent emergency to accommodate a build-out that is relocating, not stopping. Meta walking away from Virginia and pouring $250 billion into Louisiana does not erase the wires already approved in Virginia. The stranded costs simply stay behind on your bill. I know the obvious objection. Isn't the cancellation good news? For that battlefield, absolutely, and the residents earned it. But for your bill, no. Because the transmission spending was approved years earlier in a separate proceeding and keeps billing regardless. And even the fixes are slower than they sound. Virginia did create a new rate class that forces data centers using 25 megawatts or more to pay a minimum of 85% of the grid capacity they reserve, whether they use it or not. It is a real step, but it does not start until January of 2027. It does not refund $1 already in your rates. And one preservation group's analysis found that even after it kicks in, ordinary customers are still left holding about 61% of those grid upgrade costs. So here is what you can actually do, and it does not require a protest or a lawyer. It starts with a document that is already public and already sitting on a government website. First, look up your rate case. Every state utility commission posts open dockets you can read, and next year's bill is usually visible in this year's filing before the utility ever announces it. Second, file a public comment, because it works. In Ohio, the state's official consumer advocate pushed regulators into a landmark deal that now forces new data centers to pay for at least 85% of what they reserve for 12 years, with penalties if they cancel. And third, ask your commission a single question. Where is our large load tariff? Because Georgia now makes any customer over 100 megawatts cover not just their own hookup, but the upstream power plants and transmission lines built to serve them. Ohio and Virginia have their own versions. The playbook exists. Most states just have not demanded it yet. The cancellation of the largest data center in the country will be forgotten in about a week. The rate case that quietly raised your bill will keep compounding for decades. That is a trade the headlines never explain. So the next time you see a ribbon cutting or a project dying in a courtroom, do not watch the announcement. Watch the filing, because that is where they already decided what you owe. They can cancel the towers, the bill stays. Go read your rate case. This is Economic Ninja, and I am out.